Okay, we're here with Victor Morales, emerging fighter. You've been on the scene since the amateurs and you've built your record up. You're awaiting a big fight in the near future. Thank you for taking time to see me.
Yeah, of course. I always like taking time out of the day to talk to people, so I'm excited.
Oh, sick, sick. So, what is your current situation in boxing right now, and when are you hoping to get back in there?
Well, I just had a fight. I just had a fight a few weeks ago. But the Golden Boys looking to turn me around and fight me sometime in August. Is the big plan.
Okay, and you, to the best of my memory, I want to say in 2019 you joined with Golden Boy. You'd been on some top rank shows in Central California. What was that like merging with Golden Boy and being able to have a promoter behind you?
It was a dream come true. Not only because I was finally signed to a promoter, but it was my dream promoter. I dreamed to work with Oscar and work with Golden Boy Promotions since the very beginning, um, and uh, and now it's a dream come true. So I'm blessed to be able to go out now and fight under their banner.
Yeah, and I guess let's bring it all back. How did you get started in boxing?
I got into the gym when I was 7. I kind of I just followed my dad into the gym and just stuck to it ever since.
When did you realize this could be a career for you?
Uh, it was something that I always wanted to kind of do once I got started. But as I got older, I realized that I was getting better and better. And I think it was probably like 2013 or 2014 that I decided I could take this to the next level. And I did. I mean, at that point, I was still wrestling through school and just doing kind of sports on the side. And I said, uh, I'm going to drop all those sports and we're going to focus 100% on boxing. And now we're here, uh, not that long later.
You're from the Pacific Northwest. That's the Team Quest territory.
Yep.
A long lineage of like these great wrestlers. So to kind of, I don't know, what's it like being a boxer from where you're from? I'd assume there's like a lot more wrestlers than boxers.
There's a lot of, exactly. There's a lot of wrestlers. Pacific Northwest is known for wrestling. So we jujitsu and then a lot of MMA fighters. I'm personal friends with Ricky Simone. He signed in the UFC. But yeah, being the only boxer or one of the only boxers, really, it's pretty cool. I get to see people get to see me, and I'm trying to bring that side of our audience to boxing too. Is the MMA side and all those guys.
Well, I think it doesn't help that we're having these kind of, I don't want to call them freak show fights, but they're not far away from that, where it's kind of like, here's a legendary boxer, here's an MMA guy, and let's just call it boxing versus MMA when it's really just called a money grab.
Right. Uh, I agree. Those fights, they're a joke. They're a big circus. But the one thing that I can say is it's bringing different eyes to the sport. It's bringing different money, different audience, and I can appreciate that part of it, the business side of it.
And it,
Boxing wise, fighter wise, I think it's just it's a complete joke.
the positive is, it, you said it right, on the business side it could bring new people into the boxing, and if there's a guy, a young fighter like yourself or another like a Regis or somebody or whoever it is, the hope, I would hope, is maybe that young fighter, those, some of those eyes follow that fighter and that brings them more into what's really happening in the sport currently.
And that's exactly it. I've been saying it since the beginning of all this clown shows. If I get an offer to fight on one of those cards, I'm gonna hop on it because uh, the audience is completely different. All these YouTubers now that are fighting, that's bringing in a lot more younger audience. MMA is bringing in MMA audience and stuff. So, like you said, I mean, it's working for us guys that are coming up and trying to build our fan base.
And I'm kind of interested, your journey before you were signed. I remember I'd see footage of you at Wildcard Gym. Like, you were very nomadic. It felt like you were going wherever you could go and find camps and setting it up. What was that journey like before you got to Golden Boy to keep this pro boxing career going?
Well, in the Pacific Northwest, I mean, I don't get good sparring. strength and conditioning wise, I figured that part out here in the Pacific Northwest, but it's the sparring and getting to see the guys that are on my level and above me. And I get to work with those guys and spar against those guys. Back at home, it was kind of restricting me to being able to work with certain people. And I mean, that's just not how I can get better. That's not how people get better. So we left and decided to do all of our camps now in LA, in the wild card in with Buddy McGirt too. And it's just been just the best thing. We like to feel uncomfortable in training camp, and that's what the moving out of here brings out of us. So after fight, then we come back home.
So I gotta ask you this. I know a lot of boxers have that same attitude as you, but I think that that's a uniquely wrestling perspective to want to challenge yourself against the best. And I think in boxing, there's a lot of people that want to spar people that are just about the same, but they don't want to know what's above them in many instances. I'm going to ask you point blank, period. Do you think some of wrestling as a young person created your mentality for how you spar as a boxer?
I don't think so, because I've always been the kid that sparred way up bigger guys, stronger guys, better guys. I've always done that. But I feel like I actually carried that from boxing into wrestling, which is why I was able to, accomplish what I did in wrestling just through school. I kind of brought that into wrestling. But I do see that, because when I was wrestling and I was just getting started, I would, ask the guys that were, stronger, a lot more experienced, that for me to wrestle with them. So I guess I just, it worked for me at that point too.
Well, I mean, I've always been a believer in sparring as long as you're not getting hurt, because you got to know what works. You got to be in there with guys who are talented, who are going to throw things back, and you got to work on where are your weaknesses. The heavy bag doesn't punch back.
Exactly. That's exactly it. So whenever we get calls to spar with, like, I've sparred with Leo Santa Cruz, I've sparred a bunch of these world champions and stuff, and I don't shy away from any of those guys, because even if I do go in there and have a bad day, or something was to happen, or I don't have a good day in the ring, I'll know what to do, where I'm at, and then I get to fix those spots and go in for it the next time. And that's exactly how it goes. I mean, I've sparred with Leo Santa Cruz, and he's brought out some things out of me that I knew that I could do better. And so I would bring him in the next sparring session, and then, they would work. So I love to push myself. That's just how it should be.
It's almost like a math class. You're working on like formulas, and then you're rewriting the formula, and you're trying to get to the easiest solution. I get what you're saying. Hardest fight of your career so far. What's the fight that stands out as the hardest fight you've had?
Maybe my first fight with Golden Boy, I guess. I mean, I know that I'd been, about 12-0 since then, but I didn't really have a hard fight until then. Or a fight that really stuck to me until then. And once I knew that I got signed with them, I knew there's no fill-in fights anymore. There's no guys, like, I was dealing with a lot of guys that would drop last second, and we just had to find an opponent. And I mean, that's just how it is in the beginning, and that's just how it is. So we had to overcome and adjust to those things. And even with that fight, I wasn't even supposed to fight that guy. And, he was, 3-week notice opponent, but he had been getting ready for a different fight, and his fight ended up falling through, I think, through COVID. And then we ended up fighting each other. But I think that might've been the most memorable fight, because I knew going in that I was going to be step up after step up after step up now. There was no fill-in fights anymore, like I said.
And for the record, was that Dalul Olegin?
Yes.
Yeah, and that guy gives everybody tough fights. Like, even though his record is all messed up, to me,
you can't go off records. You got to know who they fought and how they look towards against those guys. And I can see the pattern that Golden Boy is taking me through with the last 3 guys that I'm fighting. So I can kind of see where I'm going and where they're taking me.
I just want to give my man Olegin a little shine, because he reminds me of a guy, if he had like a management team behind him, he could get somewhere. But it feels like they just take random fights. He's in with guys that are a little above him, but he's just got this inherent physical toughness that like always gives prospects tough fights. He's beaten some prospects, but no one ever gets out of a Dalul Olegin fight and it's just like a shutout. Like he has
No,
this
never.
trait of being physically tough. He hits weird. It seems like he rabbit punches physically on you, just wears on you. What was that? What do you remember about that?
I just, it was, I mean, I won every round, but it wasn't an easy fight. I can tell you that much. It wasn't an easy fight. I had to go in there and it brought some of the best out of me. And those are those fights that you're like, okay, the next fight, I know what I have to work on. Like after this fight, I know what I have to do, because there's certain things you see in the tape, and you're like, I shouldn't have done that. That could have been dangerous, or I need to change that so I don't have to do it the next time. And every fight now from now on is going to be one of those fights. I mean, they're not giving me easy guys, and I don't expect them to. I expect them to bring me the best opponents that they can bring me.
Yeah, and I think that's why I kind of like Golden Boy a lot, is they kind of put their fighters in tough. But what I also like is I like that Robert Diaz doesn't just like look down on a fighter if he loses. So they'll put you in tough. Like example is Jojo Diaz. He fought Gary Russell Jr., but they still viewed him as a good fighter. What do you think the path is for you? Because I have a guess what I think the path is, but what do you think the path is?
I see. So the last three guys, Jojo Diaz has fought him. Diego De La Hoya has also fought him. And it's like three or four guys that have fought these guys like back, like in the same similar order. So I see myself following in I guess that in that way, Diego De La Hoya or Jojo Diaz, kind of in that way. I see that, whatever they did in their fourth fight, or after this last guy that I fought, is probably who I'm going to end up fighting, or in that similar perspective.
Okay, because what I'm looking at, I'll tell you the guys I'm looking at. I'm looking at Diego De La Hoya and Joet Gonzalez. Those are the two
Yep,
names that I look at. Those are going to be coming fairly soon for you, and that's going to be kind of like your fight where you get the chance to kind of go to the next level.
exactly. And whenever they bring those fights, they could bring them now, and I'll be ready. I mean, we stay ready. I'm getting better every fight, stronger every fight, and I'm really starting to sit down and really settle down to the pro game. I know that I'm 15-0 now, but I can feel just starting to get more and more comfortable. Just every fight, it's more comfortable.
Something I think a lot of people overlook. They hear amateur style, but they don't really understand what amateur style is. Um, how hard was that to adjust to just this new style where it's not just basically about volume?
Uh, because I've done it for so long, it's an adjustment. It takes
Yeah.
time. Some people, I mean, look what happened to Lomachenko. He was requesting world title fights in his first and second fight, and once he got one, with Salido, he lost. And he was the number one amateur in the world. All the Olympic titles, every title, he only lost a few times, or one time or two times. I mean, and I mean, even him, he lost his second or third fight. I can't remember what it was. And it's a transition, and everyone transitions at a different time. It takes some people more fights, less fights. But I feel myself, just comfortable now. I can, my rehydrations, the diet, everything now is just, it's set in point now.
Well, you got that experience, like 15 fights, a lot of fights, and now you have a repertoire to go back to. The thing I look at is like how many Cuban fighters have been average pros? Like they're always
Right.
number one in the world. Like right now we got Andy Cruz. He's going to be the guy going against Keyshawn in the Olympics. He's going to do good. And then it's probably going to be 5 or 6 years of, man, is this guy ever going to like be an exciting fighter in the pros? We got
Right.
BC Ramirez, Arislandi Lara. Not saying they're bad fighters. I'm just saying they're fighters that the fans are not drawn to because they just stay to this amateur style of keep you
I
outside.
mean, look at Rickendow.
Exactly.
One of the number one at his time, was one of the top pound for pound fighters. And I mean, not many people knew him. People, an average boxing, fan thought he was boring. I mean, I watched his fights like, wow, that's a technician right there. And I love to watch him fight, but no one else does. I mean, he's not exciting, and it eventually caught up to him.
Well, it was like boxer porn, right? I loved watching Guillermo Rigondeaux, but pretty much any, like you said, any casual fan was like, will this fight end? And I'm like, this is pretty
Yeah.
sweet. Like, this is pretty sweet what he's doing. He's stepping over, he's loading up on that left hand. He's taking walks. He's got an active jab. He's always countering, moving.
Mhm.
And people be like, they're not throwing punches. And that's kind of
Right.
like, that's like what I always see when I think of amateurs. I always think of kind of the Cuban system and how the fighters
Exactly.
never fully transition into being a fighter that a lot of pro fight fans are drawn to.
And that's it. They always have the best. They were the best point system. They had they had the best amateur boxing around. So they like you said, exactly. Fans just aren't drawn to their style.
How hard is it to learn the inside fighting in pro boxing with the little gloves? Because I feel like that really is what pro boxing is getting comfortable with guys going on the inside with you.
It is definitely something that I started doing later, as you know, as I started to become a pro, because we were on a point system. I didn't have to fight on the inside. If I wanted to, I'd keep them on a jab. I mean, I won fights with a jab. I beat Virgil Ortiz with one punch, and it was a jab. So, and I did it 3 different times, and it's just a jab. I can win a fight with just a jab. Now, going into the pros, you can't do that now. I mean, then you fall into what the Cubans are doing. They're boring, and I don't want to be boring. I want someone to look at me and say, I want to watch him fight again and again and again. And so learning the inside game, I just pretty much I would go to Warren sparring and figure it out. I know that, and I can tell you that it is a little bit different with 14-ounce, 16-ounce gloves than with an 8-ounce glove. So it's a lot more, you got to, rely more on your head movement on the inside, more steps. Not in sparring, I can block 3 punches and give 3 back, but in a fight with small gloves is not necessarily the same thing. I'm not blocking the same amount of, I don't have the same amount of coverage with my gloves in a fight.
Well,
So being able to move your head, slip and turn, and know when to turn, and then know how many to block when you can block. And,
the big thing I see too is like there's a lot of guys who are big punchers in the gym, but when those 8-ounce gloves go on, they don't want to get that return fire. So all of a sudden, a lot of guys that I'll be like, oh, he hits hard. But then you look at his record, and you're like 6 knockouts out of 20 fights. But
yeah.
it's like in the gym, he hits hard, but it's like part of the boxing's so confusing because a lot of times guys just don't, when they get those 8-ounce gloves, it's so much about confidence. Confidence is so key in the sport of boxing when you're a pro. And I think that a lot of times the fans just look at skill sets and they don't look at the person and what they're going through at that moment.
Mm-hmm. I think that's exactly true. I, I'm at 15-0 with 8 knockouts, but I fought majority of my, first 10 fights. I fought them at 130 and above, or at 130, and I was actually trying to move down to 122 at that point. So I was fighting guys that were bigger than me. I had a few fights where guys were way over the contract weight anyways, but we still made it happen. However, we were able to make it happen. And I feel like at that point, and then with a hand injury that I was going through for my first fight, my KO percentage did kind of suffer a little bit. But once I was healed, once I actually got down to 126 and got fights at 126, then I could see the power kind of starting to translate.
I think that's the tough part is like a lot of times people overthink everything, right? And knockouts aren't everything. Winning fixes everything. So even if
Right.
your KO percentage isn't right, as long as you're 20-0 and you get an opportunity to go to the next level, that fixes a lot of things than being 18-3 with 17 knockouts. But now you can't get an opportunity because you got 3 losses on the ledger.
Right. Right.
What's your why in the sport of boxing? Why do you do this?
It's just something I love to do. It's an adrenaline rush. It's just something that makes me feel complete, I guess. It's pretty much the only thing that I do. I mean, we run a family business, but boxing is just what it's been for my family. It's brought my family together. My parents are both officials. My dad is the chief of officials for the state of Oregon for amateur boxing. My mom is an official. My girlfriend's an official. Boxing was just a family thing that we all bonded over. And I guess and I'm very family oriented. So I guess it's just something that I was always drawn to, and I always, I never gave up on. I never gave up on boxing. And once I started traveling and I was going over, to state and then overseas and stuff, it's just something that I love to do. I just became who I was, I guess.
Makes sense. How vital is your family in the role of you getting to this point that you're at right now?
It's it's the biggest reason why I am and where I am today. If I didn't have family, I mean, I probably would have given this thing up a long time ago. My family is my motivation. Bringing boxing back to the Pacific Northwest is another motivation. All my fans here in the Pacific Northwest, because we're pretty tight knit here in the Pacific Northwest. It's all a whole big family thing, and family is just what keeps me going. Honestly, it's my motivation, what keeps me going, and yeah.
So I know Strike Force did a card like about 10 years ago in Portland, I want to say. And then I want to say maybe Randy Couture had a fight up there, but really we haven't seen a big show go to in the Oregon area. So I mean, if you were to get a world title, is that the goal, is to bring a boxing fight back to your region?
Yes, absolutely. The plan is to build up more of a fan base and to bring it home, and hopefully fight for a world title at home. Um, with things going on right now, who knows if I'll be able to fight for a world title at home for the first time, but definitely fighting at home is a big goal for me.
Okay, so that's kind of like Andre Ward. Like Andre Ward, when he got the belt, he was very picky. He wanted to fight at home because Oakland never got fights, and he wanted people in
Mm-hmm.
his area to grow up seeing a world champion fighting. So that's kind of what I get from you, is that you want to fight at home partially for that, but also partially to inspire a new generation of boxers from where you're from.
That's it. There's a lot of amateur boxing, not as much as California, Texas, all these bigger states, but there's amateur boxing, and unfortunately, no one promoters, a lot of people, they don't look up north because it's just not where boxing typically is. It's wrestling and MMA up north. So that's why I had to travel around, and I went to every nationals I could. I went to everything, out of state, California, everything, to be able to build a name, because when I first started going to nationals as an amateur, whenever they heard, somebody from Oregon, they were like, "Oh, it's just from Oregon. It's just another guy from Oregon." And as I got older and older, they were like, "Oh, it's Victor or my brothers." Anybody that was, with my last name was like, "Oh, they're the real deal from Oregon, the Pacific Northwest." Like, so that's my goal, to bring in, now to the pros. And I mean, that's just the goal.
And let Uncle Lukey just say it the way I see it too. When people see you in your bracket in the amateurs and they don't know who you are, that people are thinking, "Oh, we got an easy day. We got Oregon in the
That's
bracket."
it.
And that takes a lot of disrespect. Like people that make it out of those regions, you got a chip on your shoulder because you
Mm-hmm.
hear people giggling, "Oh, I got Oregon." That's not some like
Oregon,
this.
Washington, Idaho. I mean, it was all the same thing always. And I guess that might have been what motivated me more. And after, 5 years, maybe, people started to recognize the name Victor Morales or my brother's names. And they would recognize those guys from the bracket. And so then, it kind of put, Pacific Northwest on the map a little bit. It's like, oh, it's not just Washington or just Oregon. It's, who are you fighting from there? And so I take a lot of pride in that.
Well, I think it's kind of like the mentality of the Pacific Northwest. Like it goes back to Randy Couture, a hardworking guy who was an MMA fighter that doesn't have this sexy record, but he fought everybody. He's a bona fide legend, and he's like started fighting in MMA like when he was like 35 or 36. I
Mm-hmm.
think of that region as people that go about it their own way on their own terms to prove a point.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
Okay, good. I'm glad I could sum it up that way. Um, I don't know, like anything else that I didn't touch on in this interview that you wanted to touch on?
I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, we covered it.
All my interviews are pretty much a little bit different, so I like this one.
Well, good. I'm
It's cool
trying
to
not.
talk about some different things. Different things. A lot of people that interview, they ask the same question sometimes, so it's like same thing over and over sometimes. But I appreciate asking, the background and boxing in Pacific Northwest, where I'm from. Some people, they don't care, so I appreciate that.
Well, let's just say I've been to a lot of media scrums with boxers, and it's like I've literally seen media outlets go, "No, I won't do the scrum. I want the one-on-one." So then I'll watch,
Yeah.
and then they go, "So you're fighting X fighter. How's it gonna be? So how is this camp? Okay, I got what I need. Next one. Okay, I need
And
my
next one,
one-on-one." It's
right?
the exact same thing, and I'm just looking at these fighters, right? And it's like they look so bored. So it's
Yeah.
like you're at a point in your career where you should be happy and
Yeah.
excited to do these things. The media shouldn't weigh you down for the accomplishments you have. But I feel a lot of times boxing media doesn't do any form of research. They don't watch the amateurs. They
Hmm.
don't read about the fighter they're doing. They're strictly doing it because someone within a promotion calls them and is like, "Hey, we got this fight going. Want to talk to this guy? This is who he's fighting." So you're talking to someone
Right.
that literally doesn't know anything about you, and they're just hoping that through the sheer questions you give them a good interview.
You're right. Right. The same 5 questions that they ask everybody, But like I said, I appreciate, asking about where I'm from and the Pacific Northwest. I mean, I carry that on my back. I carry that with pride. So yeah, I appreciate that.
Well, I know, and I've seen you fight before. I saw you in Tachi Palace, interviewed you backstage there a long time ago, and I've seen the grind. So I respect the grind that you're on, because it's like it's not just like you're doing this and you just got signed and out the gate. You've been grinding and trying to put on for your region for a long, long time, and it's like you're becoming an overnight what's the saying, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. It's like that's
Right.
what's happening, is like you put in the time. So now you're about to get the big fight. I think you're probably going to end up with De La Hoya, Joette. I don't think you're going to get Jojo, because I think Jojo, actually I should ask you that, what do you think of Jojo versus Fortuna? Because he's at 35. I don't think you guys are going to cross paths in the near future. My man, I respect Jojo a lot, but what do you think of that fight? Because Fortuna punches hard.
I think it's going to be an interesting fight. I think if Jojo goes in there and boxes like he does, and sticks to it, it should be a good night for him. Fortuna is just another strong guy. Jojo is sort of the fill-in for that fight because Ryan Garcia was supposed to fight.
Well, he is the fill.
Um,
Like Ryan just left the
he
guy
is the
without an
fill-in.
opponent. Yeah,
The reason why I say sort of the fill-in is when I think of a fill-in, I think of like 4 weeks or something. But this is they had
a camp.
plenty of time. He had a full camp. He didn't have half a camp or a quick camp. He had the full camp. So to say that he's a fill-in, I feel like he's not a fill-in. He had a full camp to get ready for this fight.
I'd say it's like an opportunity for JoJo, because what I
Right.
see when I see Fortuna is I see someone that tries to punch hard and then he has major lapses in concentration. So like if he doesn't knock you out, then he like checks out for a few rounds and then he's back again. It's like
Because
he has,
it is this a title eliminator fight?
more than likely. I haven't done my research, so I
Okay.
don't feel comfortable, but I'm sure there's like I'm gonna learn
I'm
about it.
sure
Fight.
it is because I'm pretty sure that they were Ryan was supposed to be, at least I'm pretty sure was supposed to be fighting after that fight for a world title, I believe.
It
I'm
makes
not sure.
sense because he's a
Uh,
star. Like Ryan's a star,
yeah.
so like you got to put him in that position. I told JoJo when I talked to him, I think JoJo is going to be the guy that beats Ryan. Like
Okay.
stylistically and where they're going, like he seems like he's all wrong for Ryan. And
Hmm.
that's just my perception. People can get mad at me or whatever, but like I told him, he's the guy that if I was Ryan, that would be the guy I'd kind of keep away, because Ryan matches up pretty good with a lot of people, but JoJo's got a tricky style. He can box, but he also loves to bang.
Hmm. Exactly. I can see that. I can see that. And Luke Campbell really did expose Ryan a little bit. Chin up, which I knew. I've been watching him do that since the amateurs. Strong hook, chin up, straight back, and I knew, I was like, I don't think Luke Campbell's gonna be the one to do it, but he put him down, and I was hoping that they would fix that at some point, but it just hopefully they do now.
Ryan to me reminds me of Prince Nazim. where it's like he has this crazy speed and crazy power, and he does a lot of things untraditional, but you
And it
can't
works.
and it works, and you can't just beat him banking on being fundamentally sound. You have
Right.
to have a little bit more than that, because what he does, as obvious as it looks on the outside, when you're in there with him, it has to be way different, because
Right.
everyone thinks the same thing. His hands have to be way faster. It just seems like once he starts to slow down, he goes to weird places.
Mm-hmm. It was the same thing with Floyd. I mean, everyone thought they had the blueprint. They always thought they had it. And everyone's like, oh, I got him this time. I got him this time. I got it. And it just never happened. Though he did have a lot of close fights, some that he may have lost. He still flipped them around second fight and proved that there was no blueprint yet. So,
The
I mean,
crazy one is Joe Calzaghe, who I don't even know if you remember, but Joe was undefeated and he fought Bernard Hopkins, Roy Jones, a bunch of people in Europe that we don't even know who they are, but like he beat them too. And it's like when you look at him, it looks like he's slap boxing. Like he's like throwing all these
right.
punches and hitting you in the back of the head and stuff. And I remember like I liked him, but I'm like, ah, man, he's fighting Roy. It's over. Oh, he's fighting Bernard. It's over. And a lot of people think Bernard beat him, but it was like it was this Joe Calzaghe kind of reminds me of Ryan Garcia, because it was just like no one wanted to give Joe credit because everything he did was so unfundamentally sound. He just was fast and
Right.
had angles. Ryan's starting to get to a point where it's like he's got to fight that guy where we go, okay, this guy's like a schoolyard bully. Like he's got to
Mm-hmm.
fight the guy we're kind of scared of to get the full credit. But he's starting to get in that thing where it's like there's more than just speed and power with this guy. Like
Yeah.
there's a little bit something more that people aren't seeing.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, I think that they forget that he's been in the gym since he was young, just like me. Him, Devin Haney, all these kids there, that are now coming up, they don't realize they were in the gym as kids. We were all growing up, going to the same national. We all grew up pretty much together, traveling to every nationals, and seeing each other and stuff. So, yeah, I'm not surprised.
It's not a coincidence. Like you, Devin Haney, Gabe Flores, Charlie Sheehy, Ryan Garcia, Shakur Stevenson. It's like all you guys are in
We've
photos
all
together.
seen each other
Ruben
for since
Villa,
we were.
you
Oh,
know?
all those guys. We've all seen each other since we were little.
And that's why, like, when I look at fighters, if fighters don't really know each other, you didn't have an extensive background. Because at
Exactly.
some point, everyone sees everybody because you're in someone's bracket. You have to eat food around someone. And it's like, that's how I know who the real ones in this sport are, because you've put 10 years in it. You've been in
Right.
the best Westerns in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and you hope that you make it to Saturday, but you've paid for the room all week and you had to do fundraisers to get
Right.
there, you know?
Right. Right. And I think the part that where we all get to know each other is those long weigh-ins. I mean, there's hundreds of fighters there, so we're all just sitting there waiting, and we're just messing around in weigh-ins and stuff. And that's pretty much where we all get to know each other is weigh-ins. We're all waiting there with our books in our hands, or they already have. We're just waiting for our weight to be called, or our age, or our names to be called. So we're just sitting there messing around. So that's pretty much how it goes.
I went to the last chance qualifiers for this Olympic trials in Oxnard, and it was the first time I went to one of those weigh-in things, and it was so boring.
Oh
I
yeah.
never realized how boring that was. Like the minute I decided to go to it, I was like, this is so dull. Like I should have just gone to the, and then I didn't even have a credential. I was there with my friend and he was just like, he's with me. And then it was just like some guy that worked at the event and we just kind of steamrolled through. Not that I should say it, but that's amateur boxing. It's just like one
Mm-hmm.
person guarding the door. And if you're super confident, they're not really saying anything.
Yeah, they just walk in like you're supposed to be there.
Exactly. They're like, he's part of the team. And then I was like, I was staying in the back room at that event center because I'm like, I don't know if I can stay in if I go to the floor. So I'm just going to stay in the back room and shoot video of the warm up. And then I went to the floor to film Mark Castro's fight and they nabbed me. And then I had to sign a form to get a lanyard. And I'm like, oh, it was just this easy. I had to give him just an autograph and I could have just
Yeah.
walked anywhere I wanted. I was staying in the
Right.
back because I thought you guys were going to boot me out of the building. But yeah, I mean, it's different, man. But I'm excited. How many fights do you think it'll take before you get your big fight?
I believe that's going to happen sometime this year, to be honest. Golden Boy is very happy, and they're moving me, as fast as they're moving me. I've already fought 2 times this year. Some people haven't fought any times this year. So, and then I fought. I fought also. No, I didn't fight last year. So
You took the
I got
whole
2
year
fights
off.
already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot. You can't even count 1 year because it was nothing happened. So I fought 2 times this year. I'm gonna fight a third time before the summer ends, and then who knows? I know for sure I'll get one more and maybe 2 more this year. So they're keeping me busy, and so I wouldn't be surprised if it happens this year.
Okay, last question. It's Pacific Northwest related. If you were to compare yourself to an MMA fighter from the Northwest, who would you be? Randy Couture, Chael Sonnen, Dan Henderson, someone that I'm leaving out? Like who's the Victor Morales MMA Pacific Northwest equivalent?
And as sad as it's gonna sound, I don't follow MMA like that, so I have no idea.
See, I was trying to go outside of the box right there. Those
Yeah,
those are the only like 4 guys I know. So like I just threw out 4 guys because
unfortunately, I just really don't keep up with MMA. I don't keep up with wrestling at all. I have friends that are in MMA. Like I said, I'm friends with Ricky Simone, and I've met Randy Couture, but I've never actually just sat down and wanted to get involved or just watch MMA. It's just not me, I guess.
I will say MMA fighters are dramatically physically thicker than any boxer, no matter what
Oh yeah,
weight class. Like whenever I meet them, I'm like, so when you meet a boxer, you'll be like, oh, that's how big he is. With every MMA fighter, I'm like, oh, he's big. Like it doesn't
yep,
matter what weight they are. I'm like, oh
oh
yeah, he's
yeah,
big. He's big. Like it's like
yep,
125. That guy's big. He's bigger than
yeah,
me.
right.
Like, I don't know. Do you do that? Do you kind of size people up when you see them? Like, even if they're in your weight class, and you're like, okay, how big is this guy? Because not that I size him up, but I look at him. The one that stands out to me was Antonio Orozco. I was like, wait, this guy has weight issues? He's like kind of
Yeah.
short. I was like, how does he have
So
weight issues?
I never really. It's kind of hard to say because I've always been on the leaner side. I've never been super jacked with muscles and anything. So I've always been leaner. I've always been just people look at me as just the white kid from the Pacific Northwest. So I kind of take that to my advantage, I guess. I don't look like much, I guess, when you look around and when I tell people that I'm a boxer, they're like, seriously? I'm like, yeah, believe it or not. And then they're like, oh, okay, I can see that. But I guess a sizing up thing I don't really do because there's really no need. I mean, if someone is jacked up full of muscles, they probably aren't as fast. Um, I mean, who knows? Everything is different. So I kind of, you know, I guess I kind of just lead off my speed and go off of there.
That's a good answer. How do people buy your gear and how do people support your career?
For right now, I haven't set up a website or anything to get gear yet. Um, I'm working on that right now. I usually just have shirts for family and my team. And stuff. But like I said, we're working on getting something put out there so that people can grab gear and stuff. You can follow me on Instagram at official_ Victor Morales, and then on Facebook it's just Victor Morales Jr.
Well, I appreciate you taking time to talk with me, Victor, and I wish you the
Yeah, of
best.
course. Like I said, I appreciate this interview.
Right on.
Not the same questions at all.
I try to not waste your time and just try to make you leave feeling a little bit better than before you came.
Well, I appreciate it.
Okay.